The rain had been falling since dawn, whispering softly against the windows of the little corner cafe. The air outside smelled of wet pavement and old leaves, but inside, everything was warm and familiar. The hiss of the espresso machine, the low hum of jazz on the radio, and the gentle clatter of cups being set down on saucers. It was the kind of place where time moved slower, where the same faces appeared every morning, like actors in a play that never quite ended. And among those faces, there was one the cafe could never forget, Mr. Harlan. Every morning, precisely at 8, he would walk through the glass door, nod politely to the barista, and take his seat at the small round table by the window. The table had 2 chairs, but only one was ever used. Across from him, the other chair remained untouched, perfectly in place, never pulled out, never disturbed. It wasn't that anyone didn't notice. They did. The new staff, especially, always wondered why an old man would sit across from an empty chair, order 2 cups of coffee, and sip from only one. The older staff, the ones who had been around long enough, knew better than to ask. One rainy Tuesday, a young waiter named Daniel, new to the job and curious by nature, decided to break the silence. As he cleared nearby tables, he noticed the untouched chair again and hesitated before speaking. "Excuse me, sir," he said carefully, "would you like me to clean up the other side? It seems no one ever sits there." Mr. Harlan paused, his wrinkled hand resting on the rim of his cup. For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then, with a soft smile that seemed to come from somewhere far away, he shook his head. "No, son, that chair's taken." Daniel blinked, unsure what to say next. The man wasn't joking. His tone was gentle but firm, like someone protecting something sacred. "Taken," the waiter repeated quietly. Mr. Harlan nodded, looking toward the chair as if someone invisible were sitting there, maybe smiling back at him. "She'll be back one day," he said simply. The young waiter didn't ask more after that. He just nodded and walked away, though the words lingered in his mind. From that day on, he made sure never to move that chair, never to wipe its surface clean, and never to question why Mr. Harlan sometimes smiled toward it as though sharing a secret only the two of them understood. Outside, the rain continued to fall, tapping softly against the glass. But inside that little cafe, it was as if the world had stopped for a moment, frozen between memory and waiting. And while everyone else saw an empty chair, to Mr. Harlan, it was anything but empty. It was a promise one made long ago, and kept every single day since. Stories shared with love by Pure Hub Kindness. Years ago, before the empty chair became a symbol of longing, it was filled with laughter, bright, unrestrained, and warm enough to make the little cafe feel like home. Back then, Mr. Harlan and Clara were inseparable. Every morning, they came in together, her hand tucked neatly into the crook of his arm. She always ordered a cup of chamomile tea with honey, claiming coffee made her heart race too fast, while he, of course, stuck to his black coffee, no sugar, no milk. Just like his personality used to be before she softened it, Clara had a way of making everything seem lighter. When she talked, even the grumpy old customers found themselves smiling. She'd chat with the barista about the weather, compliment the waitress on her earrings, and sometimes hum softly while stirring her tea. The cafe owners adored her, not because she was loud or flashy, but because she had that rare kind of warmth that made people feel seen. Mr. Harlan used to joke that she was the sunshine and he was the shadow trying to keep up. She'd laugh and squeeze his hand, saying, "Then let's keep walking together, so the shadow never loses its light." But time, as it always does, began to change things. Clara started getting tired easily. At first, it was small, a cough here, a skipped morning there. Then came the visits to the hospital, the endless tests, the quiet worry behind her smiles. She still insisted on going to the cafe whenever she could, saying, "If I stop living, then the sickness wins." So they went every day they could, and every day the staff pretended not to notice how pale she was getting. One morning, when the sun was bright and cruelly cheerful, Clara reached across the table and held his hand tightly. "Promise me something," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Anything," he replied, though his throat felt tight. "When I can't come anymore," she said, looking at him with those calm, endless eyes, "you'll still come here. You'll still order 2 cups, one for you and one for me." He frowned, shaking his head. "Clara, don't talk like that. Promise me," she whispered again, "because if you do, then I'll never really be gone. I'll still be right here, waiting." He nodded, unable to speak. That was the last time she ever came to the cafe. Weeks later, the chair across from him sat empty for the first time. The barista hesitated when he ordered 2 drinks, but she didn't say a word. He placed 1 cup across the table, exactly where hers used to sit, and smiled faintly through tears that no one saw. From that day on, the empty chair wasn't just furniture. It was memory. It was love made visible. It was a promise, the kind only 2 hearts could understand, and 1 man could keep forever. The rain came down harder that afternoon, painting the cafe windows with streaks of silver. The world outside was gray and restless, but inside, everything felt still, the kind of stillness that belongs to memory. Mr. Harlan sat at his usual table, his hands wrapped around a cup that had long gone cold. The chair across from him remained untouched. As always, a silent reminder of the promise he kept. He was lost in thought, tracing the rim of his mug, when the cafe door swung open with the jingle of the little bell above it. A gust of wind followed, carrying in the scent of rain and the faint tremble of someone's breath. It was a young woman, barely in her 20s, soaked from head to toe. Her hair clung to her face, and her shoes squeaked against the wooden floor. She looked around uncertainly, clutching a worn-out backpack to her chest. The barista behind the counter greeted her gently, but the girl didn't answer. She just stood there for a moment, like someone who wasn't sure she belonged anywhere. Finally, she spotted the empty table near the window, the one with only one occupied seat, and slowly walked toward it. "Mind if I sit?" she asked quietly. Mr. Harlan looked up, a bit surprised. No one had ever asked to sit there before. For a second, he considered saying no. But there was something in her eyes, a loneliness he recognized, an ache he'd carried himself for years. So, he nodded. "Of course," he said, motioning to the chair. The girl sat down carefully, setting her backpack on the floor. She rubbed her hands together to warm them, her fingers red from the cold. "Thank you," she murmured. After a few moments of silence, Mr. Harlan slid a napkin across the table and smiled softly. "Looks like the rain caught you by surprise." She gave a small, embarrassed laugh. "I was walking nowhere, really, just walking." Her voice cracked a little on that last word, as if she'd been holding something in for too long. He nodded, understanding more than he let on. "Sometimes, nowhere is exactly where we need to be," he said. That made her smile faintly. When the barista came over, he ordered a sandwich and pushed half of it toward her. She hesitated, then accepted it with quiet gratitude. "You remind me of someone," he said after a pause. She looked up curiously. "Someone who left." He shook his head, a gentle smile tugging at his lips. "Someone who never really did." They ate in silence after that, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, the kind that heals. And for the first time in years, the chair across from Mr. Harlan didn't seem so lonely anymore. The rain eased outside, and through the misted glass, the world looked softer, almost new again. Story shared with love by Pure Hub, Kindness. Over the next few weeks, the young girl kept returning to the little cafe. At first it was by accident, or at least that's what she told herself. But soon, it became routine, almost instinct. Each morning, she'd slip through the door just after sunrise, her hair still damp from the fog, and find Mr. Harlan already seated by the window, waiting with a smile and 2 steaming cups of coffee. She learned his name, and he learned hers, Lena. She was studying at a nearby college, though from the way she spoke, it seemed she didn't have anyone to share her days with. Her parents had moved away years ago, and the few friends she'd made were the kind that disappear when life gets heavy. So, she found herself in that cafe, sitting across from an old man who talked about gardens, letters written on yellow paper, and a woman named Clara whose laugh could stop the rain. Sometimes, Lena would bring a book, and they'd sit quietly, reading in companionable silence. Other times, they'd talk for hours about everything and nothing about kindness. About growing old, about how the world changes faster than the heart can keep up. The staff began to notice how different the cafe felt when they were together. The air seemed lighter, warmer. Even the regulars smiled more often. One gray morning, as clouds rolled lazily over the city, Lena asked him something that had been sitting on her tongue for days. "Do you ever stop missing her?" she said softly. Mr. Harlan looked out the window, where raindrops slid down like slow tears. "No," he said after a moment, "but missing her means she's still with me. That's the beautiful part." She frowned slightly. "But doesn't it hurt?" He smiled gently, the kind of smile that comes from a heart that's been broken and healed many times over. "Love hurts only when we forget why we promised to keep it alive," he said. "When Clara asked me to keep coming here, I thought she wanted me to suffer. But now I know she wanted me to keep living." That day, for the first time in years, he ordered 2 cups of coffee without hesitation. He placed one in front of her, and one before the empty chair. "Today," he said, "let's drink for all the people who couldn't make it but still sit with us in spirit." Lena nodded, a soft smile forming on her lips. Together, they clinked their cups gently, as though toasting to someone unseen. Outside, the rain finally stopped, and the sunlight broke through the clouds, scattering golden reflections across the glass dot in that quiet corner of the cafe. Something shifted, not loudly, not suddenly, but beautifully. The chair that had once symbolized loss now carried something else entirely: connection, hope, and the quiet continuation of love through kindness. The morning Mr. Harlan didn't show up. The cafe felt different. The air was still, and the usual rhythm of clinking cups and quiet chatter seemed offbeat, as if the heart of the place had skipped a beat. The barista, Sarah, noticed at first, the corner table by the window, empty for the first time in years. She kept glancing toward the door, expecting the gentle jingle of the bell, and the familiar sight of Mr. Harlan hanging his old hat on the back of his chair. But the hours passed, and he never came. By noon, Lena pushed through the cafe doors, a book tucked under her arm, and a smile already forming. the kind reserved for someone you've come to care for deeply. When she saw the empty table, the smile faltered. Her heart gave a small, painful twist. She walked over slowly, her hands trembling slightly. Unsure why. On the table sat 2 cups of coffee, one half finished, the other untouched, and between them, a folded piece of paper. Sarah approached quietly, her voice low. "He came in early today," she whispered. "Said he wanted to leave something for you." Lena sank into her chair, staring at the note as if it might disappear if she blinked. She picked it up with both hands and unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky but familiar, each letter drawn with the same care he gave to his words when he spoke. "Dear Lena," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I've gone somewhere Clara's been waiting a long time for me to reach. Don't be sad. Promises don't end when people do. They just change shape. You gave me something I didn't know. I needed a reason to smile again, to feel the warmth of kindness one more time. The chair isn't empty anymore. You filled it with laughter, with hope, with the kind of light Clara used to carry in her eyes. Thank you for that. Keep coming here. Keep making promises. Keep living. Harlan." The words blurred as tears welled in Lena's eyes. She folded the letter gently and placed it back on the table beside the untouched cup. Then she whispered softly, "I promise." From that day on, Lena took Mr. Harlan's seat by the window every morning. She'd order 2 cups of coffee, one for herself, one for memory, and sit quietly for a few minutes before opening her book. Sometimes, she'd smile at the empty chair and talk softly, as though he were still there. Nodding in approval, the cafe staff began to call it their corner, a place where love and kindness refused to fade. And people who sat nearby said that sometimes, when the morning light hit just right, you could almost see the reflection of 2 figures by the window, an old man and a young woman, sharing coffee and conversation beyond the reach of time, because love, like kindness, never really leaves. It just finds a new heart or a new chair to sit in. Stories shared with love by Pure Hub Kindness.